Hey, welcome back to Hardworking Man. Like I said, today we're getting our sap brought over, filtering it out, then we're going to run it through the RO, into the pre-warmer, into the boiling pan. Out of the boiling pan, we're going to run it through a filter to get the maple sands out of it, into the finishing pan, and we're leaving with jars of maple syrup. We're here with Jonathan again today, so he's going to explain a little more of the process, how he does it. He's the expert here. We'll call him Sugar King.
I don't know about all that, but basically, just in case, these are the drums we collected out of the woods, right?
Yep.
I've got a very similar setup to my woods. They tend to get leaves, twigs, maybe a random rug or two. So I like to filter it out of that into some, I find a clean cloth works really well. Not a super thick cloth, because all I'm trying to do is catch the big debris, you know, a leaf, that kind of thing. From there, we'll go through into the reverse osmosis system, which will pull out about 2/3 to 3/4 of all the water. After all that water's taken out, then we'll start the boil.
Now this was a system you built, right?
No, I assembled it. I actually, not a plug for them, but there's their label. It's a guy out in New York, a high school teacher actually, that came up with the idea. He builds hobby grade reverse osmosis systems. Commercial grade stuff starts at like $3,500, and unless you have a whole ton of sap to run through it, it's just way too big. So he makes a more intermediate style, I guess. But it can take this up. Normally, coming out of a tree, maple sugar or maple sap is anywhere from 2 to 4% sugar content. 4% is really, really good. I'd say most of my trees average somewhere in the 2.5–3% area. This takes it up to 10%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but this entire drum was full. By the time I'm done reverse osmosising it, ROing it, it'll be down to about here. And that is all savings of time on the boiling pan. I can only boil it about 6 gallons an hour of evaporation. So the more I can do before the more water I can take out before I even put it in the pan, the better I am. It makes everything go faster, simpler, and it's cheaper on the fuel. I don't have to spend nearly as much on the natural gas to run it, or wood if you end up having a wood-fired one.
So does that pretty much just take it in one hose and out another, or is there more hoses to the system?
Well, there's actually 3 hoses. I currently got it set up now. I got my input hose. This is just your raw sap. This hose over here is pure water. I'm just putting it in a drum for future cleaning purposes, but that's pure water coming out, no sugar at all. And then this hose is your concentrate line. I'm just recycling it into the same container, just going around and around through it. You could do it from barrel to barrel. It all depends on how you want to do it. I find it simple and easy. I'm just condensing and just recycling it through more and more times up until I get to the sugar content I'm looking for. So after it comes out of that, the 30 gallons or so that you brought me today will take probably about half hour or so to run through the RO, and then it's out right on into the boil. I've got one pan set up right now as a warming pan. All that does is gets the sap as close to boiling as I can get it before it's time to put in the main pan. That keeps the main pan from slowing down, keeps the boil rate high, and just is much more efficient that way. Otherwise, I'm losing, oil evaporation every time I put fresh sap in. Which, when that thing's cooking, it's like every 10 minutes. That's what I got.
Here's the boiling system he has. They're restaurant stock pot boilers. He's got them hooked right up to the natural gas. Like I said, the warming pan on the left to pre-warm the sap, and then the boiling pan on the right. Then that has a drain off the side. So once that starts getting down close, we'll drain it out of this pan through a... What do you drain it through to filter it?
I'll get the filter for you. I'll show you. It's a fabric called Orlon. It's just basically looks like a thick felt. I've got that, and then I got a thin, looks almost like, I don't know, parchment paper perhaps. and stack them, layer them together, and then filter it through that. I just hold it in the strainer. It takes out almost all the sugar sand. I mean, a couple percent of the sand gets through, but not a ton. And if, for those of you watching this, if that's something you've never heard of before, it's just minerals that condense out of the sap. It looks a lot like sand, hence why it's called sugar sand. But it's perfectly safe to eat. I actually generally take if I happen to be drinking coffee while I'm doing this, I'll take a teaspoon, scoop some out, put it right in my coffee. Tastes great. So it's just basically condensed minerals. But not everyone wants to see that in the bottom of their jar, so we filter it out.
All right, this is Nate, one of my boys. He's gonna test the sugar content of is this the stuff that's been run through the RO?
Well, I like to test it both. I like to keep an eye on the permeate to make sure there's no, or on the wastewater rather, to make sure there's no sugar content that we're losing. Kind of keep an eye on the machine or this. This is just a basic refractometer. You get it on Amazon. I think I paid $23 for it. All it's doing is it's basically the light coming in, the amount of impurities in the water it's what it's gauged to detect. So you could use this for sugar water, or if you want, like what we're doing for. But if you wanted to use it for, I don't know, anything you want to test your well water to see if your well water's got impurities in it, same idea. So all we need to do is get a drip or two, doesn't take much, on the lens. Now look through the eyepiece. It's a blue background. Where the white line meets the blue is what the percentage is.
That's not even to the one. Like,
yeah, this one should be like a
below
quarter.
half. Like
Yeah.
a quarter.
Yeah, it's just off above the zero. So I'm guessing we got just a touch of sugar left in that water, but you know, at less than 1/4%, I'm not worried about it.
See what this premium sap we brought over is. It's probably at 8 or 9 before we even hit it. This stuff's good.
So the same thing. You come do it.
Nate goes out and sings to our trees.
Just about a drip. All you need is a drip or so on there. Right? Put that lens down and give her a gander. 2 3/4. That's not bad. That's about what mine's been averaging this year so far. So I'd say 2 3/4. So good stuff. Some of my trees were producing 2% the other day. So each tree is going to be a little different. Each year's a little different, and it will vary somewhat based on the day. You know, I've been a couple trees I was curious about. I had started off the year, one tree was only giving me 1.5%, which is pretty low. And then a couple days later, it was giving me 2, and then went back down to 1 3/4. So it will fluctuate a bit from time to time.
There goes the kids on the side-by-side just mowing trees down.
They just ran the bird feeder. They knocked the bird feeder off earlier today, and then she just looks like she ran it over and cracked it. So, oh well. But yeah, so that's what that is. And then this is the stuff that we're going to be putting right into our pan.
Zach, you want to test this out? See what it's at?
Give her a read. See what you think.
That's like 8.
Yeah, right about exactly 8%. So that means just about 70% of that volume will be dumping out into the grass here in a bit, and it saved us that much effort. A very handy $23 tool. Up until this year, when I got the reverse osmosis, I didn't bother with it. I just took the sap out of the tree, dumped it into pan. You know, the old, very basic method. But now with this, I got very curious. The maple sap, maple sugar in houses were charging $60 a piece for these, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend that much money. Go on Amazon, $23. Who knows how good it is, because it's probably just cheap Chinese, but it works.
And I was looking on there's different ones. That's a 0 to 10. They have different scales that you can get, I saw. So the 0 to 10 is probably what you need for maple sugaring.
Well, that's what you're going to want to do for sap.
For sap. Yeah, not the actual maple syrup.
Well, you can get those that have the gradients for actual sugar. So because maple sugar or maple syrup should be at 66%.
All right.
So you can get all the way up there if you want. or I know people test like their pools or their fish tanks for salinity or whatever, and that's a different gradient. So they're all on Amazon, all the same price, just a different little filter in there. But yeah, for this part of maple syrup, for sure you're gonna want the 0 to 10. If you're gonna test your actual the maple syrup at the end, then yeah, you're gonna want to go ahead and get the higher gradient. But for me, this works pretty well. So when I'm doing the boiling, I try to keep my pan at about 1.5 to 2 inches deep of sap. Any more than that, you're using a lot of energy to keep that much mass of liquid up. Lower than that, you're starting to worry about burning. The other thing is, it seems to be quite a nice little sweet spot. For my pan is right about 1.5 to 1.75 inches. I actually get a higher boil rate at that depth than any other depth I can put it at. So in this pan, how fast I'm going, I can only get up. I pre-warm about 3/4 gallon or so at a time, and then every 10 or 15 minutes, or less, I gotta be dumping it in there. So if I'm trying to go that quick, I gotta keep up on it. If I know I'm going to have to go inside for a minute, cook lunch or whatever for the kids, or then I'll leave it down. I'll put my main pan maybe 3 inches deep. It's not quite as efficient, but it gives me a little more time in between refills if I have other things to do. But if I want my best boil rate, I stay out here all day because I get a good 1.5 gallon an hour better evaporation rate. So now we wait again.
We got Rachel with us today, joining us in the process, making some maple syrup. It's a little chilly out here in the garage. Rachel decided to warm up over the boiling pan.
It's too cold for me.
Once we get done getting the sap off the truck, we'll get the garage door closed and that'll heat it up a little bit in here. All right, we've been running the RO on the sap we brought for probably 5-6 minutes. We had probably, 35 gallons in there?
Yeah, they're about 30-35.
And then we've pulled almost 5 gallons of water off already. That's 5 gallons we don't have to boil. And like I said, it's been probably 5, 6, 7 minutes. We didn't think to keep track from the beginning. But how long would it take to boil off 5 gallons of water?
That's a good solid hour on my setup.
An hour right there we saved in 7 minutes or so because of the RO that he built or put together. This is why I have friends who know how to do things, because I'd be outside over a barrel stove for hours and hours. All right, we're gonna wrap up the RO on this barrel so we can get the rest of this maple syrup finished out. We've pulled about 20 gallons of water out. So that took our little less than 3% sugar content, and we're up a little over 7 now. Again, saving boil time. Just the RO, like pretty much top of the line for home use that he put together. It's gonna save you some time out in the garage or the barn, the sugar shack, whatever you're using. And it's gonna save you a lot of the natural gas, propane, or wood if you're burning with wood if you don't have your own supply. You can see it gets a lot thicker, a lot milkier, because it's a lot more higher sugar content, less water. The water coming out is crystal clear.
Turn this down. We're down to under an 1/8 inch on the side. She's skinny on that side.
And next we're just gonna take the sap that we've been boiling out of the pan, run it through a filter, get it into a smaller pan, bring it in the house and finish it off. So what temperature are we at?
Well, it got thin enough I was having a hard time getting a good reading, but we're at about 217.5. So just about the final syrup. I could go higher, but I got to make sure I don't have too thin of liquid on my pan, or else I risk burning it. So depending on the batch size, sometimes I have to pull it just a smidgen earlier, but generally, you know, maple syrup is at 219, and I try to get as close as that as I can on this pan before I do the filtering to catch as much of that sugar sand as I can. But like I was saying, is if we're doing a small batch like this, it gets real thin in the pan, and once you get down under 1/8 inch, the chances of burning it is really high. And when you burn a pan like this, it is hours of scrubbing it to try to clean it out. It is a pain. So we're going to take this in the house, and we're going to finish it off in this, get it up to the 219, and jar it down. Alright, so that's the sugar sand. I just pulled that off the filter top. That's what we're filtering out. Very mapley. It's just got a little grit to it. It's a lot of the extra minerals and such. No. I put that in my coffee. A lot of times I'll just scoop that. Yeah. If I have coffee while I'm making this, I'll just put a scoop of that and put it right in my coffee. It tastes just as good.
And it's like creamy, so I can see that.
A lot of people just don't like seeing it in the bottom of the jar. I have coffee right there on time. So a lot of people just don't like seeing all of that in the bottom of the jar, you know, because some years you can get up to, you know, a quarter of the jar full of it.
Right.
It makes the bottom of the jar look a little cloudy. So I'll filter it off. It tastes good. It
does taste good. Zach, he's still dying.
All right, it's up to, what is it, 218?
219.
219. And now we just take it off into the jars, cap it while it's hot, and that'll seal it.
Oh man, it's like this.
Good.
So there it is, from sap to syrup. Took us about, what, 15-20 minutes on the video. Couple
Video
hours
time.
total. The reverse osmosis obviously cuts that time down immensely.
That's a terrible video. You gotta get...
Yeah, you talk, Rach.
Exactly.
All right, Nate's gonna sample the batch of maple syrup we just made.
Oh. Pretty good.
Pretty good. All right. That's.
Hers might be a little hot still.
Mine's a little hot. Mmm. Yummy.
Got your audience.
I do. You want to try some?
You try it.
Down. It's dripping underneath.
Yours is too.
That good?
There's always a batch a year that becomes the brewmaster's batch.
Mmm. This is it?
That's a yes.
That's the best batch of the year, right there.
That is good. Very good.
I mean, the other stuff is good, but that's
That's pretty good.
that's
Do
where
it.
it's at. Goes down.
Oh, where's that other one?
That's not
The
much.
dark one.
Early in the year, it's less sweet, but very mapley. Later in the season, it gets more like caramel to it, and it gets sweeter.